we meet again at last. The circle is now complete.
What's the world coming to?
Well, you got a problem with what I did, Anthony?
Oh, no. Hey, no.
Fucking rat, anyways. Whole family's all rats. Could have grew up to be a rat.
Stupid bastard. I can't fucking believe it.
Gee, I'm real sorry your mom blew up, Ricky.
Now you're gonna dig the fucking thing. You're gonna dig the hole. You're gonna do it. I got no fucking line. You're gonna do it.
Yes, I'll take the fat hole. I don't give a fuck.
I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was pure and simply evil.
Jesus Christ. Mister, you okay in there?
Put some Vince coffees around here someplace.
Have you any idea what the cost of your actions is? What their effect might be? Or you to give them hope? What do you give them? We give them happiness. And they give us authority. Groovy.
Hey everybody, it is May 4th, 2017. I am Chris, coming to you live from the library on behalf of Cinephellas, the only place for all your cinephilic needs.
Greetings and salutations from Los Angeles.
The landscape of pop culture and entertainment news is almost limitless today. Whether you're getting your information from social media, mainstream television shows like Good Morning America, or BuzzFeed with their many, many listicles, it's pretty overwhelming. So if you have to develop some kind of criteria, some kind of decision-making process, wouldn't you want to get your news from an outlet that's built around passion and joy and love for entertainment? Well, that's exactly what you're going to get when you go over to Cinephellas.com. The website is built on an over 30-year friendship between its founders, and really, at the end of the day, all they care about is sharing a beautiful community with you. So join me over at Cinephellas.com for the latest information, and hey, maybe one day we'll even be friends. Let's get to the show, shall we? Hey everybody, how are you doing today? On this edition of the Cinephellas Podcast, we're going to be talking to director Matthias Hoene about his latest project, Enter the Warrior's Gate, which hits theaters tomorrow, May 5th, 2017. It was written by Luc Besson, who you might be familiar with through the film Lucy, as well as The Fifth Element, and his co-writer Robert Mark Kamen, who is known for Taken, The Transporter, and The Karate Kid. The film stars Dave Bautista, who also has a film coming out tomorrow. You might have heard of it. It's called Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Little film. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe, perhaps. It's only the hugest film of the summer. Uriah Shelton, who is also one of the co-stars. He, of course, is known through Netflix's 13 Reasons Why, one of the hottest shows on television right now. Now, I have to admit, I'm a little behind. There's so much content. I'm still trying to catch up. But as soon as I do, I can't wait to dive in to see the hype, the joy, and the controversy surrounding 13 Reasons Why. Also, we have Mark Chow and Nini, who give amazing performances in the film. But before we get to my conversation with Matthias, I'd have to admit, lately I've been having a kind of existential crisis. You know, I've been thinking a lot about things like passion. What happens when passion fails? What's the meaning of life? Just small things like that. But it's a good question. If you have passion, say that you've loved something your entire life, and you feel that your entire life has been leading up to a certain moment. So for instance, you want to be a professional athlete, and you've played ever since you were little, and you've been gearing up for the moment when you can make that your career, and therefore vocation as well, because you really believe in it. An artist, say a musician, a filmmaker, a writer, all of these vocations, and I don't use that word lightly, come with a guttural feeling that if you don't somehow become and are able to assume the identity that you're desiring, then meaning in your life is somehow never going to be completely there. You're always going to be missing something, like a kind of vacancy in your soul. And as a result of this existential crisis, I've been thinking a lot about Henry David Thoreau. Now, years ago, when I first read Walden, how many of you are familiar with Walden? I was really touched by it. I mean, yes, there are some problems with it. We have Henry David Thoreau. He decides that living a modern life in 19th century America is just too much. He wants to live, as he says, deliberately, simply. So he orchestrates the situation where he goes into the woods and he spends a period of time alone living in a cabin. The cabin starts to fall apart. He's forced to kind of deal with only what he can do in terms of the top of his intelligence. So if there's an animal, he has to deal with that. He has no preparation, really. He has a few tools. Now, this is how it's pitched, right? The dangers are pitched as real, and they were. But the part of the story that we don't often hear is that he was at Ralph Waldo Emerson's cabin, and he wasn't exactly alone, right? I mean, he had some access to the town. Let's not be crazy. I mean, just like it reminds me a lot of a reality show like Naked and Afraid. And not to validate Naked and Afraid or anything like that, but on reality shows like that, the situations are real. Those people are thrown into those situations by themselves. They have camera people there, but if a desperate situation occurs, then the network, the cameramen or women, we have to be gender neutral here on the cameras, they're not going to let the contestants die. Similar situation with Thoreau. Emerson, his buddy, his good friend, transcendentalist friend, was not going to let Thoreau die. Nonetheless, Walden is a brilliant piece. And I've been thinking a lot about what it would be like to adapt Walden into a comedic screenplay. And I first started with this idea after rewatching Roxanne, which Steve Martin adapted from Cyrano de Bergerac, the famous French story. So I want to read to you a quote, a little section of Walden, and maybe hear your thoughts. So leave a comment at the bottom of the podcast. All of you listeners out there, millions of you, leave a little comment at the bottom. So here's the quote. It comes from page 8 in my edition. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. From the desperate city you go into the desperate country and have to console yourself with the bravery of minks and muskrats. A stereotyped but unconscious despair is concealed even under I fucked that up, didn't I? Let me start over. The mass of men lead fucked up again. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. From the desperate city you go into the desperate country and have to console yourself with the bravery of minks and muskrats. A stereotyped but unconscious despair is concealed even under what are called the games and amusements of mankind. There's no play in them, for this comes after work, but it is a characteristic of wisdom not to do desperate things. So this begs a lot of questions. Obviously, there's an element of privilege here. We can't deny that. But the philosophical points ring true. when we strip back all the other bullshit. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Now that's probably a quote that you've heard before. It's one of the most famous quotes from this piece. And when I hear that phrase, quiet desperation, it really hits. I think about the way a lot of us, we search for purpose and meaning in life, and we just kind of throw it away. We don't really expect joy or look for joy. We are just content to live without it. And even if we're not content, we sort of look forward and we say, well, one day, when the hard work is done, we'll achieve it. The problem is, and now this is not a shot at hard work, because I'll be up every morning at 5 a.m. I'll go to sleep at 2 in the morning if I have to, if a project warrants it. I'm all for hard work. But the problem is when you keep working hard and working hard and working hard, you lose sight of what it means to be a human. You lose sight of joy, and therefore living, the active sense, the verbial sense of living, is not occurring. From the desperate city, you go into the desperate country. So it doesn't really matter what setting you're in. You're still going to have to deal with certain problems, because the main problem, the issue, is within you. A stereotyped but unconscious despair is concealed even under what are called the games and amusements of mankind. So even when we do have a moment of joy, if we're not fully in the moment spiritually, it's not a true, pure, essential joy. Like say you're watching a movie, one of the many that are recommended on Cinephellas.com, or a TV show. You're going to feel maybe pacified in the moment, but if your heart is not true, if you're not looking at it with your whole spiritual self, true enjoyment eludes you. There is no play in them, for this comes after work, but it is a characteristic of wisdom not to do desperate things. So the last question that's begged here is, what does it mean to be truly wise? Is it the recognition of this kind of void that I'm talking about? Or is it something deeper? Wisdom not to do desperate things. So the key to life, it seems then, is to live your life with peace and equanimity, where you're never even tempted or put in a position where you have to do desperate things. Now, of course, this is easier said than done because we have obligations in modern society. Thoreau understood that, and I think the problems he was wrestling with would be even more magnified today. He was sensitive to technology, especially when it came to trains. I mean, he raised the question, once you build a technology, does it become your master, or are you still its master? And his point was, you then become subservient to the technology. And I think we see that more than ever today when it comes to the internet and the way that we're obsessed with our phones. I mean, last night I was thinking about this. I couldn't even put my phone down. I was like obsessed with it, always looking at it. It's like that attention, that feeling of validity that your phone gives you by being a link to the outside world is powerful, almost like a drug. And by not engaging it, it hurts sometimes. I think a lot of people feel that way. It really is a disease, an addiction, just like drugs. And that itself, it's not a blaring, oh my God, I need help kind of feeling, but it is a quiet desperation that Thoreau is talking about. See, all that is ripe for a comedic screenplay. You're just laughing your ass off right now just thinking about it. Well, anyway, think about that. I'm going to close the book for now. Hopefully you'll check out Walden. If you haven't, I would highly recommend it. But let's talk about today's interview. I had the incredible pleasure to sit down with Matthias Hoene. I believe I'm saying that right, Matthias. If I'm not, please correct me next time we talk. He is the director of Enter the Warrior's Gate. And Enter the Warrior's Gate hits theaters tomorrow, Friday, May 5th, 2017. It's Dave Bautista's second movie that's coming out tomorrow. Of course, we have also Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which I know everyone's looking forward to. Also, the film will hit on demand, iTunes, and Amazon tomorrow, May 5th, as well. I know I keep saying this, I'm kind of fanboying out, but I really love having these conversations with filmmakers and performers. This, I would say, though, my conversation with Matthias was one of my favorites. It went so well that we actually ended up talking over. So we usually get about 10 to 15 minutes for these conversations, and he actually requested that we continue talking, and I was really pleased by that, because my goal is that everybody I talk to, I want them to have a good time, and hopefully they get something out of our conversations beyond the usual, let's say, innocuous kind of questions that they might face from certain media outlets. But it was great to talk about Matthias's early career. Before he directed movies, he did commercials for auto companies and also music videos for the likes of Fatboy Slim. Who doesn't like Fatboy Slim? Come on. Got to talk to him about using horror as a narrative device to create conversations about politics and social issues. And everybody knows I really love that. And we got to dive into a conversation about political correctness. And here, you're going to hear the quote specifically, but there's a critic that was highly critical of Enter the Warrior's Gate for cultural appropriation. And I wanted to give Matthias some time to respond to those indictments. And I think he had a beautiful, intellectual, thought-provoking response that we can all look to when addressing these issues of cultural appropriation in the future. All right, well, here, have a listen to my conversation with Matthias, and I will see you on the other side.
Let's do it.
Hello?
Hi, is this Chris?
Yep, hi, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you? It's Erica.
I am good, Erica. It's good to hear from you.
I have Matthias on the other line.
Okay, great. Patch him through whenever you're ready.
Okay, and we have 15 minutes.
Cool.
Okay, Matthias, you're on with Chris.
Chris, hey, how are you doing?
I'm good, sir. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Cool. All right, so I appreciate you taking some time, so we'll just jump right in and get to the questions. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely perfect.
All right, awesome. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was your career before directing movies. You did some commercials for auto companies, some music videos for artists like Fatboy Slim, right? So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the transition from those mediums to directing for TV and feature films.
Yes, so, I grew up in a family of scientists in Berlin, and I had no friends in the film industry. I didn't know anyone who actually was making a living in the movies or commercials or music videos. I couldn't have been further from the industry. However, when I moved to London and I studied there was a lot of friends of mine who were doing music videos and seemed to make a sort of living out of it and a career. And it seemed something that I could do at the time, which wasn't so far removed from where I was at that point. So that's kind of how I got into music videos. And luckily, I was very lucky that my first commercial won a Golden Lion in Cannes, and suddenly I was a commercials director, and people were asking for my reel, and I was like, I don't have a reel, and I only have 2 things on it. But it sort of set me up and gave me like a second film school where in commercials you can work with some of the best crew and some of the best equipment that you can get. You can play around with a lot of things to hone your craft. But and I sort of think that a lot of my commercials were sort of story-driven anyway. However, of course, the switch to going to features is very different and very difficult, and not many people manage to do the jump for various reasons. But what I didn't want to do basically was I didn't want to be a commercial director who tries to get onto a studio film for a long time and
sometimes it works out, or sometimes it doesn't. But you're always sort of at the mercy of someone giving you a gig, and then if you're lucky, it's Friday the 13th, the remake of the prequel or something, and I didn't want to be that guy, and so I kind of did a little web series for very little money, and on the back of that started developing my own film, which was based on the idea of was inspired by a couple of Cockney actors that I was working with, who I thought was so funny in the web series, where they only had like 2 or 3 lines, but they were improvising and giving so much energy that by the end they took over about a third of the project. And they were just basically not scared of any supernatural threats, unlike any of the other protagonists. So they're kind of big mouth, and they're like, all right, what is it, fucking zombies? Come on, and have that with a shotgun in the hand, and then sort of a big sort of brassy attitude. And I thought that kind of thing, that sort of tonal thing, we hadn't at that point seen in a horror movie. And I pitched it to a friend of mine, a line producer, and he came back a week later and I said, look, Matthias, I've set up our movie. I'm like, what movie? He goes, Cockneys versus Zombies. We've got a sales agent, they love the idea, now all we need to do is write the script. So we wrote the script, and I was kind of very keen to not, to try to make it not just a cash in on being able to sell a film off the title, but try to do a really well-observed and funny thing that stands on itself. And after that's completed, and I've won a few audience awards and did very well at financially, I started developing a few studio projects, a science fiction project called Capsule that I came up with and was on the blacklist in 2013, and a few others. And while I was doing that, the song was looking for a European director who could do comedy, action, and visual effects. And I realized that maybe there's not so many comedy action directors in Europe at the moment. And through my commercials, I had the visual effects experience. And so it seemed to fit, and I put together a really big presentation. I was very nervous because Luc Besson is one of my heroes, from The Big Blue to Leon the Professional, The Fifth Element, to Taken, and even Lucy. I think he's just such a huge figure in European cinema that I was very nervous about meeting him. In the end, it was very cool. He said, I just have one question with you. Your humor, I'm worried about it. It's very British. Mm-hmm. And I was laughing, and I said, look, Luke, if I manage to fool you as a German with my British humor, I can definitely do French or Chinese or American humor.
Mm-hmm. That's really funny. You speak to this idea of, kind of using your experiences to find a specific identity, right, as an artist. And so there's this quote that I really love. It's on your IMDb page. So let me know, first of all, if it is actually a quote from you. But I really love the sentiment here, and I wanted to read part of it and get your take on it. So the quote is, "What I love about horror is that you can take certain serious subjects, political, social, and talk about them in an entertaining way that would be impossible in another sort of drama. If you made a horror film with the same themes, a lot of people might see it. Do it intelligently and you'll get your message across." So the first thing I wanted to ask about that quote is, what does intelligent filmmaking mean to you, and how is that idea represented in Enter the Warrior's Gate?
Well, I think, it's sort of weaving interesting messages and themes into a story that is fun and entertaining, whether that's through action or horror. You could interpret my first film as a kind of a vibe on the problems of gentrification in East London, or you can just see it as a zombie comedy, whichever way you please, But then in Warrior's Gate, of course, it's a project that I didn't write, so it's something that came to me. And what I did love about it, and I think the scenes that speak to me in the film is, which is something actually my dad, who is a scientist and doesn't understand what filmmaking is, came to visit the set, and he came to visit the protagonist Jack's bedroom set that we built, and he said, "Yes, this looks exactly like your bedroom used to look. It's exactly the same, isn't it?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, maybe it is." So it was sort of my own kind of realization of my own sort of boyhood dreams of, sitting at home playing computer games and dreaming of escaping to fantastic worlds where I can become a hero and find and then sort of rescue a beautiful girl and prove to her that I'm the one that she should be hanging out with. So it was sort of much more of a, it was a boyhood dream that I kind of wanted to realize in this film. A very innocent kind of boyhood dream.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a great relatable quality of the film, is that there's this sense of dreaming and being able to see yourself as part of a fantasy, which is great. One of the things that I noticed too, in just doing some background research, we live in a time where political correctness is inescapable, right? There's always going to be some commentator out there that suggests a point of view that something's offensive. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about an article. Ben Pearson of slashfilm.com wrote an article. It was pretty, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's pretty critical of Enter the Warrior's Gate for cultural appropriation. And he makes the argument that it's, kind of relying on those old stereotypes of the white hero saving the people of color and, the helpless woman and those old stereotypes. Now, I think that's a very complicated argument. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but I wanted to give you a few minutes to respond to that, to see if you had anything to counter or just to get your feelings out there.
Yeah, I think, first of all, definitely the story in itself is sort of feels like an 80s kind of throwback kind of film or idea to me, and that's what I liked about it, that sort of 80s innocence. But okay, so I feel that yes, well, first of all, let's start with the princess. I did really not feel that she was a helpless princess, because I kind of felt that while I felt the qualities that she was expressing as, on one hand, being a powerful empress or future empress, groomed to be very regal and strong and composed, who was never allowed to be a girl because she skipped that part. She was groomed to be an empress. She was always an empress. So she, through coming through a portal to a different world, experiences what it's like to be a teenager, but then shows us that she actually also is an extremely capable fighter and warrior, and can pretty well stand for herself. And then if you rewatch the film, by the time our heroes come to rescue her, she's already broken free from her shackles, and she would have rescued herself already at that point, or not very long after. So I tried to make her quite strong and powerful with it, as a character. And I think also I feel like, what this is not is a sort of a dramatic examination of those cultural, those cultural issues, but it's sort of a comedic play with archetypes that we have. And I kind of always saw it as a comedy more so than anything else. So, the archetype of the loser boy, and the archetype of the strong warrior, and the archetype of the princess, and the archetype of the evil barbarian. They're all archetypes I wanted to use to kind of play for comedy. So, for example, the fact that Dave Bautista as Room, he is kind of evil, but he's kind of he's not a sort of po-faced, straightforward, cut-out evil guy, but he's kind of has fun. sort of, he always kills the wrong guy. He's sort of quite a knowing, self-aware version of that character. And I think all of the characters in the film have that sort of slightly self-aware quality to it. Also, quite a sort of heartfelt human trajectory. And by the end, they all show that they're overcome what the stereotype would be. And I thought the message was okay. But I also understand that the idea of a white guy going to save a Chinese princess, is of course can construe as old-fashioned. So I think I was looking at it much more innocent eyes, and I also feel that at the moment there's a lot of talk about whitewashing and stereotypes in films, and you go and look at a film like Ghost in the Shell, which arguably suffered a lot from that controversy, even though in Japan no one really minded the casting of Scarlett Johansson. And it also means that because this film didn't do well and there was a controversy created around it, that we will not get any more Japanese cultural artifacts to come to big Hollywood or to be big budget or films that try to be made for a global audience, because now people will just keep their fingers off anything that could cause controversy, which is also not good for art. I think it's great that the conversation is happening and that people think about building up Asian film stars that can greenlight big action movie or big blockbusters. But remember, it's only just happened that even you can have a female-led huge blockbuster or an African American-led film. It's a process that's happened. But every time a film didn't do well, when it's sort of the intention behind it was good, it's sort of bad for all of us.
Yeah.
A long-winded kind of answer. Huh?
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say we have 1 minute left.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just to close up on that, I think you're absolutely right. This idea of self-awareness, it's almost like a wink to the audience that says, hey, this is an important conversation that we should have, but here there's just one side of that discussion being presented. Yeah, and
I think,
go ahead.
Even scenes at the end of the film where we have, we play a little bit with the stereotypes and show our fierce warrior doing a funky pop dance. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a tongue-in-cheek kind of concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you got to run. Just a last question for you is, what advice would you give to young filmmakers that are inspired by the work you do and would like to have a career like you have?
Making films is really hard, but then at the end of the day, it's all in the word itself and the word filmmaker. The only way you can become a filmmaker is by making a lot of films and keep making films. And a lot of people talk about wanting to do something, but they don't get around to actually, putting together the friends they have and getting a camera and telling that story. And so I think as long as you keep making films and you keep getting better and keep persuading more people to trust and believe in your vision and your ideas, then you can have that career. I mean, definitely from my point of view, I came to a city where I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any connections in the industry. I had really no easy way in, and it sort of I slowly worked myself into doing what I do, which is great fun.
Patience, right? Patience is key.
Yeah. I mean, you sort of, and then you get, when you get given £50 to tell a story, you need to do it well enough that next time people will give you 500, and if you then over-deliver something that is so good that next time people trust you with a bigger budget, then you also work your way up into the industry. I think because of course also filmmaking is always, it's not in a vacuum. You do have to persuade someone to fund your crew and all of that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for taking time today to talk, and good luck with the film.
Yes, absolutely. And let me know, what do you think about the about that article you mentioned? And I kind of get it. I wasn't quite expecting quite as much harshness on that. I kind of thought the film is quite innocent, and all the characters within themselves have a strong emotional core, and and it's quite self-aware. But anyway, I might be wrong.
Yeah. That would be great. I'd love to talk about that. If we had time to do it now, we could. But I think you have to run, right?
We have another interview, but
can we delay maybe 5 minutes?
Yeah. I'll let him know.
Okay.
5 minutes, is that okay?
Cool. Yeah, that's great. You raise a really good point. I think a lot of the discussion, I come from an academic background where, we're sort of steeped in these conversations about representation. And, I've come to realize that there are a lot of people genuinely making arguments about representation, and social justice is incredibly important. But then you have a lot of people who, especially I've noticed this with some film critics, is, they just like to be alarmist, right? And sort of anything that might raise a red flag, they like to sort of jump on without any kind of proper argumentation about either why it might be offensive or how to make it a learning experience, which is a missed opportunity, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, and also, with Warriors Gate, literally, I'm so happy that it is as good as it is, because no one else, there was no one else who made a co-production with China and came back with a good movie, when I went to do it. And, the choices you make often, you don't have a choice. You have a choice of one person who can do the role. And it's not like I couldn't cast an Asian guy for Jack, because I did not have that choice. There was only one person who was good enough to play the role. And it was pretty much the same with all the other actors. You try to just make sure it's not awful. You try to make sure everything works. And then of course, as those conversations happen and we get better at doing, bringing talent in and training talent up, you have more choices, and you can be more selective. And I think, and even when it comes to casting and whitewashing, the lists you get of actors who can greenlight your movie, there's sometimes only 5 actors on there, and if you don't get those 5 actors, your movie is dead. That's it. It's as simple as that, and no one sort of talks about that. Of course you can make a $30 million movie with only 5 actors, but then, it's how can you change the system that you can have a list of? How can you, the only way you can change it is if people come and see those other actors, and people would not just go and see, Ken Reeves or Brad Pitt, but a wider variety of actors. Then you would have a lot more choice and a lot more scope to make much more interesting entertainment. So, I think it's a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
It's market driven, but hopefully we can do our thing to widen what's possible in the market, but also it really relies on people to go and see films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The process is incredibly important because, as you said, at the end of the day, this is a project in which is being funded and which is trying to make money. But at the same time, you mentioned no one had gone to China, for instance, and had a productive creative relationship. That part of the story is not really told, right? When you see critics kind of just lash out over maybe the representation in the film, it's kind of like, well, that's only part of the story.
Definitely. I want to I want to create a critic boot camp where everyone should be invited on set and do one day of shooting on set and see what it's like, and then go back and criticize movies. Ever since I started making films, I've stopped criticizing anyone because you realize what a tough game it is, to just make something decent, let alone great,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's even if
often it's sort of you don't have choices. You don't have the budget to do the first 8 choices on the list, so you always end up with choice 9, or there's simply not enough available talent that you even have a choice at all. I think it's sort of a very very difficult process to balance everything out and look like it was meant to be that way, look effortless, and look like all of that process didn't happen.
Yeah, and with the amount of responsibility and decisions that a director has in front of them, it's even if they had the purest of intentions, it's impossible to execute every single decision in the way that they would want, simply because of no human being could do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also you're sort of in charge of a giant dysfunctional family, which is the film family. It's a hilarious roller coaster full of all sorts of exciting events. But I think anyway, you understand. Yeah. I try to just get a little bit more into that, and I think yeah.
So
good.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I hope that was helpful, more or less, and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this was really insightful. I really enjoyed talking to you, and as I said, thanks again for taking time out of your day to have a chat.
No, absolutely, I appreciate it, and thank you, vice versa.
Cool.
Okay, thank you for covering the film and talking about it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do so, and I look forward to whatever your next project will be.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Erica.
Take care.
Bye, guys. So, if you're upset about Enter the Warrior's Gate, I completely understand. It's not exactly the most modern representation when it comes to people of color, but it's a start, right? Why don't we take that? Why don't we do research? Why don't we have intelligent conversation on how to make it better, right? Let's not hate for the sake of hating, but rather hate with potential to make better. I think Matthias was onto that point, bringing up this idea we should look at things from different perspectives, because then and only then can we start positive dialogue. All right, everybody. So no fancy music this week. It's going to be a little quick outro. We're just going to go with the regular theme music on this one. I will see you next time on the next edition of the Cinephellas Podcast. I hope that you share a movie and a positive dialogue with someone you love. See you next time.